Hi, this is CSProfessorPam with Jumpstart Code, and we are learning about Flexbox. And we are working through this tutorial in Interneting is Hard, trying to do this particular layout. We have approached this in terms of boxes. We worked first on this header, then we worked on this banner section, we worked then on this photo grid section, and now we are on the footer. But there's one more thing I want to show you about the middle section. So here is the page as we have it right now. I'm going to take those borders off of these things. This border right here. So we have, here's our HTML that is very well indented so we can understand parents and children. We've got a class called container. That's my whole page, right? If I click on this, that's the end of that. It has, this is the first horizontal box header. Here's the second horizontal box, banner. Here's the third horizontal box, photo items. And I've just taken that border off. Yeah, so now they look a little better. And we learned how we have these divs that have two classes. The item class is controlling just the width and the height of these divs. And then each one has another class that gives it a certain background color. And we have given the parent display flex. I don't actually need this, right? Because flex direction row is the default, but I was experimenting and showing you what column would look like. So I could take that out. I'm aligning these items center, justify, content center, and flex wrap is what is allowing it to go to the next line because we've given these a size of 30%. If I actually make them like 33%, you'll see that, right, takes up pretty much the entire width there. There's enough space for 3. But if I wanted to put a little bit of margin around these things, then my items here, if I give them margin of like 10 pixels, right now, because of that extra margin, and I do have border box, but because of that extra margin, we might need to make this more like 32%. Or maybe we'll take it back to 30. There we go, right? So you have to be mindful of those things when you are adding margin and padding sometimes. Now, if I want to change the order of these elements, which sometimes is something that you want to do when you are doing your mobile design, then there is something called order. So let me show you how we can do that. Flex item order. Right? So there's this property called order. And if I go in here into my style, remember I have something for each individual one. Suppose I say this 2 one. I'm going to give it an order of 1. And I'm going to give this 4 one an order of 2. All right, so I have 1, 3, 5 because anyone that I don't put an order on is going to go first, right? They basically by default have an order of 0. So 1, 3, and 5 went first, and then 2, and then 4. And you can see that here. So you're able to control the order of things there. All right, so let's work on the footer, the last little part here, and we're going to learn a little bit more about how to control the spacing. So I am going to add my footer HTML, and the tutorial uses a different div, but footer is a semantic tag, so I'm going to use footer as my tag there, and I am going to put 3 divs in here. Right? So again, we'll be able to control these together and individually. So before I do anything, we won't see very much because we don't have any content in those footers, right? So if there's no content, you're not going to see anything. So the first thing we need to do is these footer items need at least some size. So I'm giving them a border, a background color, and a height. Don't want to do this yet. All right, so I just have these 3 separate divs here, right? Now I want to give them, I want to differentiate them a little bit here. So I've got footer, let's put some text inside of them. Right, so actually let's just put 1, 2, and 3 here. And the nice thing about doing layout like this, just focusing on your layout, then you can go in and add your content very easily afterwards. All right, so we have this. Now, so right now, if I make this flex, so let's go over here, and I am going to target the parent, which is footer, and say display flex. All right, so that puts them on the same line, but the size of them is based on the size of the content that we have in there right now, right? If I want to control and say how I want these things to stretch, then I'm going to go in here to footer item, and I'm going to say flex 1. Right, so even though they only have a little bit of content in there, what I'm saying is to make each one of them, size them equally to match this width. And so they'll all stretch equally regardless of what content is in them. But suppose I want the middle one to be twice as big, this 2. So remember, I have footer 2, and if I make it flex 2, so this is not quite like order, it's similar. So do you see this middle section is now twice as big? I actually think this height is a little too much for these. I'm going to make them 100. Right? So we can control how these things are, these 3 child elements, proportionally, how that space is divided using this flex property. If I said the first one, if I said footer 1 had Flex 2, then it would be twice as big as the other two. So that's another way that you can control things. So we see that there's a lot of things that you can control using Flex, but really the three major properties that you tend to use together are your display flex, your align items, and your justify content, right? So even down here, since I have a little bit of content in my footer, we probably want to align items center. See what happens when we do that. And hold on, let's see why that didn't work. So let's go back to the HTML. We have footer. Footer is the parent. Footer has display flex. Footer needs a height. We put the height on the footer item. I'm going to actually take the height off there and put it here. We need to make them a little bigger. Let's make this now 200 pixels. All right, so wait, let's see. Why is it not changing my footer? So sometimes when I'm having a problem like this, I go to my border, set a border, 1 pixel, solid black. Let's see what the footer has. All right, so so it was centered. We couldn't tell because, okay, look, if I give the footer a background color, then we'll be able to see. The problem is we gave background color to the footer items. Right, so keep this in mind. This is going to be kind of not the best color scheme, but we'll be able to see. So that was being vertically aligned, right? And if I want my my horizontal alignment, right now, because we're using the flex stretch, then we won't be able to do that quite the same way, right? Let me take this off for a second. Let's take off what we did. So you have to realize sometimes there are things that affect each other. Right? So now you see we've got those things. They all want to be smashed together. And if I wanted to now say justify content like space between. All right, so we could do that or space around. So all these different things kind of work together, which is why when you are trying to make adjustments on your page, you really need to decide, what adjustment am I working on right now? Then go to your HTML and see what you need to target to specify that. And then go to your CSS and decide what you need to do. Now, if I do want to center this content in here, I think I can do that by going to my footer item here and saying align text. I think that well, because they're just divs. Oh, it's not align text. It is text align. All right, so many properties, hard to remember them all. There you go. Now you have the content centered within those spaces. Okay, so we have this HTML. You notice how I kind of have things broken out so you can clearly see. So there were sort of 4 sections here. 1, 2, this middle section, and the footer. So 4 major sections. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, and here's 4. And we've seen examples of how you can have multiple classes on elements. And we have seen how to use Flex to control the layout, right? So we started with the header, made that flex, controlled that. Then we worked on the middle section, and then we worked on our footer. So hopefully that will give you a very good introduction to working with Flex. And we will use this in one of our next videos, which will have to do with responsive design and media queries.